everyone, thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Timing is Everything, using social media monitoring to be 2 steps ahead of the consumer. Today our presenters are Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a Marketing Insights Analyst in the Brighton office.
And we're also joined by James.
Hi, I'm James. I'm the Content Researcher in the New York office.
So today we're talking all about the importance of timing, and we're going to be using examples from our recent food and beverage report. So we'll also be talking about understanding seasonal trends, using year-on-year analysis to optimize your campaigns, aligning your social strategy with your audience, so looking at when they're online, and then some demonstrations of some tips and tricks of how you can do this kind of research and analysis yourself. So don't be shy, we'd love you to take part. You can either tweet us at Brandwatch using the hashtag BrandwatchTips. We'll also be doing a short Q&A at the end, so if you want to ask questions, you can either ask us via Twitter or in the session chat on GoToMeeting, and we'll go through those at the end. If we don't get to your question in the allotted time, then don't worry, we'll follow up with you afterwards.
So I'm going to spend a bit of time talking to you about seasonality and so how the big 3 cordial brands in the UK have managed to make it work for them. So as consumers, we're a real fickle bunch. So we're easily swayed by world events, by the seasons, by sponsorship deals, but pretty much more often than anything, we're swayed by celebrities. So I'm not sure about you, but I quite often sit at home and think, how can I make my boyfriend a bit more like Brad Pitt? Well, luckily for me, I can just go to a shop and spend 50 big ones, and now my boyfriend can smell like Brad Pitt. So the power of endorsement with celebrities is a massive one. But not every brand has all that money to spend, and often it's not spent wisely there anyway. So we can see here that Samsung paid LeBron James $100 million to be the face of the Galaxy Note 3, which was one of their big new releases. Unfortunately for them, their money wasn't well spent. So they spent $100 million, and about a week later he tweeted saying that his phone had erased everything in it and rebooted. Basically, everyone was like, well, we all know you've got a Galaxy Note 3, so we're probably not going to buy that now. And as somebody tweeted there, that sound you heard was everyone at Samsung face-palming simultaneously. So that was the ultimate face-palm there. So allocation of budget perhaps wasn't so wise, spending $100 million on LeBron James. Celebrity endorsement fails aren't the only fails, though. There are also seasonal fails. So we need to use a tool, a social media monitoring tool, maybe to look into this. So if you pitch something or release a product at the wrong time, that can be real bad news. As an example, if you were selling mulled wine, you probably wouldn't want to release it in June. Or if you were selling a sledge to a cat, you also probably wouldn't want to sell it in summer. If you were maybe selling a book of light salads, you wouldn't release it in the winter. Historical data can really help you inform as to when you would release your campaigns. For the food and beverage report, we looked into cordial market leaders. So cordials in the UK, we call them squash, are kind of a bit like, for the non-Europeans on the call, a bit like a Kool-Aid. They're a kind of juice that you would dilute with water, and they're really popular here, really big. The no added sugar one's really, really popular. So we looked into the big 3, and we saw that 51% of the conversations around cordials were about these big 3, Robinsons, Ribena and Vimto. So we looked into the data, and we could see that year on year there were peaks and lulls in the conversations around cordials. So if you look at the red line here, you can see that Ribena peaks in February, and you can see that the green line, which is Robinsons, peaks in March and April. And when you look back at the data historically, every single year, March and April, Robinsons have the market share of conversation, and that's because they sponsor Wimbledon. So Wimbledon, the international tennis event, is really well associated with Robinson squash. So conversation is always about them in those months. So Ribena had £5 million to launch their no added sugar product, which is a massive competitor of Robinsons. So they were able to look at the historical data and see that it probably wouldn't be best for them to launch their competitive products at the same time. So they then looked at that and thought, right, we'll release it earlier in the year and continue to get a bigger share of the voice. So it was a tactical release on their part. By avoiding releasing the new product when their main competitor it was a real strategic move, but that wasn't the only thing that they could have done. So when we looked into the picture again, you can see that in December there's a massive peak of people talking about cordials. So they're saying stuff like, oh, we want hot squash, but they're not actually mentioning one of the big three, which is funny because hot squash is normally sort of blackcurrant, it's warming for the winter, but nobody's mentioning Ribena, Vimto, or Robinson's, who all have blackcurrant squashes. So what they would probably be best off doing is maybe aligning their campaign with this, maybe launching a hot squash product at this time, and then they would then have the market share. What we can learn from this is that using year-on-year analysis is a really big and clever thing to do. So it really gives brands the edge, and if one of the big three were to release a product in December or release a marketing campaign that was saying that was a bit more experimental, like a hot squash campaign, they would then have the market share of voice. I'm now going to hand over to James, and he's going to talk a bit about Starbucks and how they beat off the summer competition.
Thanks, Natalie. So now that we've seen how seasons affect brand mentions, we're going to take a look at how brands can actually capitalize on these seasonal interests. So the Starbucks Frappuccino is a great example of a brand that takes advantage of seasonal markets. They came out with the goal basically thinking, we want to make it so that when people think of a nice summer beverage, the first thing they think of is the Frappuccino, thus capturing that summer market. So what they did is from May 1st to May 10th, they offered half-priced Frappuccinos coupled with the hashtag Frappuccino Happy Hour. They then promoted that at their stores, on their website, and through their social channels, often saying things like, summer is near because it's Frappuccino Happy Hour at Starbucks. So looking at an analysis of brand mentions on social media, we begin to get an idea of the impact that Starbucks campaign have on their consumers. This graph shows the volume of mentions of the Frappuccino, as well as a few competitors' products, including the McDonald's McFlurry, Wendy's Frosty, Dunkin' Donuts Coolada, and the Dairy Queen Blizzard. If we take a look at the social response, it's clear to see that the campaign was a huge success. There was a huge peak, obviously, during the start of the campaign, but more importantly, you can see that the brand mentions were sustained throughout the summer, which is really indicative of the campaign's longevity and being able to drive social buzz for a long period of time. And so now that we have the data collected, we can actually break it down further to discern what exactly those conversations were focused on. It's great to have the most brand mentions, but if they aren't positive or are sort of irrelevant to your goals, it actually doesn't mean that much. So a closer analysis of the 320,000 plus mentions shows that the Frappuccino is referenced with the word summer more than any of the competitors we looked at. So clearly, the social media metrics reveal how successful the campaign was in capturing the summer beverage market and in ingraining that idea in their consumers that the Frappuccino is a summer beverage. Now I'm going to hand it back over to Natalie and get a little more into the microanalysis.
Thank you, James. Yeah, it's also really important to remember that we're not just looking year on year, and it's not only important to look at the seasonal changes that affect consumer sort of decisions, but it's also the times of day that people are tweeting, trying to decide what they're eating for dinner, for example. And when we were researching for the food and beverage report, we found out that people are most likely to tweet about intentions to eat healthily at 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. And when we were looking into the data, we think it's probably because, well, we know it is because we were looking at the tweets, but it was most likely that people might feel a little bit guilty after lunch. Maybe they had something they feel they shouldn't have done. And then at 3 p.m., they've got all the intentions, oh, I might have some pita and hummus, or I might have some crudité. And then at 9 p.m., maybe after dinner, and they're planning their day ahead. So they're thinking, right, I'm getting my lunchbox together, I'm going to get some fruit, I'm definitely on for that bikini body. So when we looked at all the tweets, we could see there's definitely an inclined audience there. So there's a few examples on the screen now. So people are saying, right, what should I have for breakfast tomorrow? I'm going to start eating really healthily. People really do have this intention that the next day is a brand new slate, and they're definitely going to get on board with the whole diet thing. But we didn't just spy on hungry people. We also spied on the health food vendors. So we wanted to see how they were reacting to this. So were they looking and scanning for an inclined audience? Well, turns out there weren't, no. So we looked at a number of big US-based health food vendors to see how their social activity aligned with those of an engaged audience. And as you can see here on the screen, they really don't match up. So you can see the orange line here is the health grocers. So you can see the community manager, or quite often just a lone tweeter, might sit at their desk, throw out a few tweets before lunch, get maybe their 5 or 10 that they have to hit that day, and then dwindles off after lunch, and then they go home to bed and forget about it. But actually, their target audience who are tweeting about wanting a healthy snack are, as I said, tweeting after lunch, then going home, maybe commuting, and then sitting at home after they've had their dinner, planning their day ahead, and throwing out some tweets again. So they really don't match up. So what can the health food vendors do about this? Well, here's an example of a health food vendor who's got it right. So we found Udi's Gluten-Free were doing the right thing. So they were sending tweets out at the end of the day, really trying to engage people. So here's #tip, don't waste time finding safe options to eat or grow hungry at your desk. What gluten-free grub will you bring tomorrow? So they're really trying to start a healthy conversation with people that might be trying to plan their day ahead. So they're trying to hit the relevant people at the right time. So what we can learn from this is that brands really ought to learn to get nosy. They really need to go granular and look into the micro picture and look at not just year-on-year data, but also minute by minute, hour by hour. So they can learn from other brands' mistakes and start aligning their efforts. And that, obviously, more engagement can end up with more money, which is what we all want. So how did we do this? So I'm just going to hand over to James, who's going to talk you through how he found the data that we've just spoken about using social media monitoring.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. So now that we have an idea of the important role that timing plays in campaigns, I'm going to give you a quick overview of how you can discover these insights using a strong social media monitoring tool. So digging deep, how to collect, analyze, and interpret social data. The topics I'm going to go into are how to identify someone's intention to do something, how to outline a sentence structure, analyzing data by the week, day, or hour, creating timelines with multiple queries, and lastly, I'm going to briefly cover how to export data for custom analysis. So on the left there is an example of a Brandwatch query used to uncover conversations with an intent to eat healthy. Brandwatch queries use Boolean language, terms like and, or, not, and near, with a series of specific operators to parse apart exact phrases and make the data collection process much more precise and accurate. That way you're only grabbing the discussions and the mentions that you're really interested in and none of the spam. So as you can see from the query before, the near operator is an essential component for uncovering intention. Basically, its function is to find two words that are within X words from each other, and how you define X changes the scope of what you get. So my general rule of thumb is, near 4 or 5 finds words within the same phrase, near 10 to 15 looks for words within the same sentence, and near 40 to 50 finds words within the same paragraph. Lastly, if you do near XF, it lets you find words that are following each other to find sort of sequential patterns. And using these tools, you can begin to build like a sentence structure to search for specific phrases that fit a certain mold. So if we go back to the query, you can see we're looking for personal pronouns like I, me, my, near phrases declaring some sort of desire like need, want, plan, to eat, eating, consume food, healthier, healthy, healthier, better quality. So that sort of outlines the data collection process, so you can see how that collects that tweet back there. But now that we've gathered all the mentions we want, there are tons of ways you can break down the data and make sense of it. In this webinar, we're really just going to focus on building a time series, but know that there's a lot of other ways you can use that data. So in the app, if you open up your dashboard and create a chart, you'll have the option to analyze data by hour, as seen in the graph here, or also by day, week, or month, if that's how you want to look at it. Now, with good social media monitoring tools, you can also run timelines for multiple queries. Here we see the same example on portals that Natalie discussed before. Each of these was run as individual queries, and that way we could tackle all this independently and find what we wanted to narrow in within each brand, and then they're next compared over a year-long timeline. So graphs like these are great for competitive analysis and for measuring the value or the impact of seasonal campaigns. And lastly, like I said, I just want to mention that all the data can be exported, so you can analyze it any way you want, really. The graph here was actually created in Excel by exporting the hourly mentions across a month, then discovering what the average number of mentions was for each hour of the day. And this type of expert analysis is really useful for evaluating daily behaviors and finding out, are we generally engaging our audience at the appropriate time? Are we tweeting when we should be? Which, as Natalie discussed earlier, can really make or break a campaign. So yeah, hopefully this gives you a good outline for a few ways you can use social media monitoring to understand how to be a little bit more strategic about your outreach. Last thing is, please, like Jasmine said, don't be shy. If you have any questions at all, just let us know.
Thank you, James. So we're going to go on to your questions now. If you don't want to stay for questions, just wanted to let you know that if you would like to see more of the analysis that we've touched on in this webinar, then you can download our food and beverage report using the link on the screen now. So we'll go through some of your questions that have been coming through. Please feel free to continue asking in the chat box or on Twitter. So we have one question from Michael. Natalie, perhaps you can take this one. He says, doesn't the volume timeline for cordial suggest that Ribena has much higher volumes than Robinsons across most of the year?
Yeah, thanks for your question. Yeah, when we look at the data, you are right. Ribena do have a bigger share of voice than their competitor. But obviously they would be looking at this data to try and be a bit tactical and think, right, well, we don't want to launch a product that's similar to Robinsons when they've got the larger share of conversation. So I think when you look at that data, you'd say, yeah, they do throughout the year, but they would specifically want to avoid the times of the year where another company, one of their competitors, have a larger share of voice than them. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. James, perhaps you can take this one from Alexis. She's asked, please can you explain the F with the near operator again?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way the near XF operator works is it finds words that are in front of each other so you can sort of build a sequence. So if I'm looking for, like in the example earlier, if I'm looking for mentions of people saying, I want to be eating healthier, I can do I near 5F healthy, and that finds I in front of the word healthy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's clear. If you want further information, then please feel free to let us know and we can follow up with you by email to explain further. Just quickly, Brian has asked if we can put the download link to the report up again, so here that is for you. Spencer has asked what's the program or app called which we use to gain the data. James, do you want to explain?
Yeah, the app is Brandwatch itself, Brandwatch Analytics.
Yeah, so we've been setting up these queries in the Brandwatch Analytics platform and doing the analysis there. Sandra has asked, can you use Brandwatch for any company or competitor, or is it associated to the industry or of the company who has purchased it? In answer to that, yes. So the way Brandwatch works is that you can set up search queries for anything you want. As James showed earlier, the sort of search string with the Boolean operators, those are free text, so you can search for any term. So it's not restricted to just the industry you're in. You could search for yourself, a brand, a competitor, or even just a topic. We sometimes do, like the eating healthily query shown here. We're just researching for when people are talking about a specific topic rather than a particular brand. So it's really flexible and really up to you what you want to search for and analyze with the tool. David has asked, when a new person is given access, would they have the same dashboard as someone that has already been using Brandwatch? I'll take that one. So it depends. You can share your dashboard. So if the new user is with a company that already is using Brandwatch, then they can share the dashboards and see what is already there. But users can also set up their own dashboards depending on their permission structure that they've been given by the company who's purchased Brandwatch. So we offer default dashboards, but also completely custom dashboards, and you can set up whatever you like and share them among your team. I have a question for you, James. Richard has asked, did you look at the sentiment of the tweets, or can you do that analysis in this report?
Yeah, you can absolutely look at the sentiment of the tweets. Most sentiment analysis, it does have some discrepancies, and not all of it comes out 100% accurate across, and that applies to all social media monitoring platforms. So it requires a lot more manual going into the tweets individually, and with 320,000 plus mentions, that's really time consuming. So what I find a little bit more helpful is to kind of look for topics that are positive or topics that are indicative of, you know, the types of conversations. So when we go back to Starbucks, you know, I look for mentions of summer because most people talking about Frappuccino in the summer, it's a positive mention, and it's really, that's what they're looking for. Yes, you can look at sentiment. I find that it ends up being more helpful to look at topics.
Thank you. A follow-on question from David about dashboards. He's asking, how is it done to share dashboards, I think. It's not clear if you're a Brandwatch user already, but if you are, then just on your dashboards page, there's a column called sharing next to your dashboard names. You can click on that, and then you can decide which colleagues to share your dashboards with. If you're not already a Brandwatch client and you'd like more information, then let us know and we'll follow up with you afterwards, and we can show you maybe on a call how that's done and give you some more information. Josephine has asked, are we planning to do research around the finance industry? Natalie?
Hi, Josephine. Well, you're in luck because we've actually done a big in-depth report earlier this year on the finance industry. So it's hosted on our website. We can send you the details if you want to leave your details afterwards. But it's quite easy found. You could probably search in the search bar. But it's a really long, in-depth, really good social listening for the finance industry. So hopefully that will help you out.
Yes, that can be found on the reports page on our website, which is brandwatch.com. Sandra has asked a similar question, which is, do we have reports for other industries, like the one we've given as an example? Where can they be found? Natalie? Yeah.
Hi, Sandra. Yeah, so as Jasmine said, there's a reports section on our website where you'll be able to find all of the case studies and reports that we've done in the past. We actually will be releasing one later in the year, well, a couple later in the year as well, on command centres and consumer tech as well. So look out for those later in the year.
Cool. And which reports have we already done this year so far?
So this year we've covered, we did a guide on Pinterest Analytics, which is a really helpful tool to help you try and cut through all the fog in Pinterest Analytics. We did one on household and personal care goods, social listening for the travel and hospitality industry, and social listening for financial services. So we've covered all of those subjects this year, and obviously next year we'll cover the same amount because we're working really hard.
And if you have any requests, then feel free to email or tweet us, and we'll try and cover your industry as well. Thank you for joining us. That's all the questions we've had so far. So if you'd like to ask us something post-webinar, you suddenly think of something you'd like to ask us, then feel free to contact us. You can either email us or tweet us or find us on any other social channel. Thanks very much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it, and see you again soon.